Welcome back. In this video, we're going to start texturing our chair. Now, we want to make it look like this chair that we have as a reference picture. But we're not at a level just yet where we can create our own materials. So what we're going to do instead is use existing material. You can do that by going to polyhaven.com and downloading this oak veneer material. Now, when you're downloading a material from Polyhaven, for example, it's important to know what you're downloading. In our case, we could download a blend file, a GTF, a material X, or a zip file. And we want to download a zip file so we can basically go through the shading aspect and assign all of them. Okay, just make sure that these are your settings and click on download once ready. You don't have to download the 4K, you could download maybe 2K if you want to, or a high resolution, but depending on how strong your PC is, I suggest that you do not go over 4K unless needed. Once you're done with downloading, make sure to unzip it and place it in a folder where you want to have the files. Now, in that zip folder, you will find a textures folder which you can use. Okay. Back in Blender, we can go to Shading and select one of the parts of our chair. It doesn't matter which one. Now, once we do, we see that we basically don't have anything going on. And if we go to the materials properties, we actually see that we don't have any material. Now, it doesn't matter where you create this. You could basically create it in layout, modeling, UV, or sculpting. It doesn't really matter. But it's important to create a new material. You can either do it by add a new material here or click on this button. Once you do, a principled BSDF material will be created for us. Now, this doesn't have much going on right now. So we will be adding our textures that we just downloaded to this BSDF material, to all these slots. To do that, it's important that you go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and make sure that you have Node Wrangler enabled. Once you enable it, click on the hamburger menu on the left bottom and click on Save Preferences. This way, it will be on every time you start up Blender. Node Wrangler basically makes it much easier when you're working with nodes and shading nodes in Blender. Okay, back to our principled BSDF. So before I do anything, I want to rename this to oak. So we know that our material has a correct name. Next up, what I want to do is click on my principled BSDF, hold Ctrl-Shift-T, and then go to my textures, where I have all these different ambient occlusions, diffuse, displacement, normal map, etc. I'm going to select all of them, and you will notice that we have, for example, 2 normal maps, etc. So you don't have to worry about that when you're using Node Wrangler. It will pick the correct material for you or the correct texture for you. So in this case, just select everything and click on the Set button. And it will automatically create everything for you just as it should be. Now, while we do have our material assigned, I'm noticing that it's not assigned to all the other parts. Now, we could manually go here and, add it to each aspect, but it's much easier to just select all the pieces and select the piece that has the texture that you want to use as last. Click on Ctrl-L on your keyboard and click on Link Materials. Let me do that again for this. And this way, the material will get assigned to all the other objects in our scene. Now, if you're noticing that the screen keys is not working, it's because I'm in the shading tab and somehow it does not work here. So don't worry about that. I'm doing my best to explain everything as we go along. If you click on T on your keyboard, you can bring up the toolbar on your left, and N on your keyboard still does the same for the items, tools, and view, etc. And you can minimize them again by clicking the same button, the N or T on your keyboard. Okay, now with this added, while it does look great, we do have a few issues. For example, this somehow, while it looks like it's correct, should be a bit more stretched. Now we can solve this by UV unwrapping our model. And to do that, all I have to do is go into the UV editing panel, and here I can basically click on one of these images, and I want to click on diffuse so I can basically see the texture that I'm working with at the top. And don't worry if you cannot follow along or don't understand what all of these do. Once again, the UV unwrapping or UV editing is a separate model, and we will dive really deep into that later on. But for now, just try to follow along. Okay, now that we know that we are looking at this image, and I'm using the diffuse because it gives me the best idea of how my UV unwrap is going to look on that texture. So let me turn on shading by going on here. Now, what I would like to do is maybe turn these so that the lines are in the correct direction. So, but first, let's start once again with this leg. I'm going to select all of the pieces by clicking A on the keyboard. Then I'm going to click on U for UV unwrap. And there are a few options here. We could unwrap angle-based, conformal, minimum stretch, smart UV projected, light map pack, follow active quads, and a few others. For now, we want to keep things simple and let Blender do the UV unwrapping. So I'm going to click on Smart UV Project, and I'm going to leave everything as is. The moment I do, you see that my back right leg of my chair is correctly UV unwrapped, because the UV unwrap, if I were to put this back together, would actually turn into this chair. So basically imagine that you have a cardboard toy that you have to, bend and put together to get a certain shape. If I were to go to this leg, you see that this UV unwrap, or this UV, does not represent the shape of this leg. That means that we do not have a correct UV. There are a lot of other ways of finding why you don't have a correct UV, but once again, that's for later. So all we are going to do now is select this, click on Smart UV Project, and unwrap it too. Now our material looks much better and is aligned correctly. Let's also do this part. Once again, click on the tab button to go into edit mode, click on A to select everything, click on U, Smart UV Project, and unwrap. Great. Now, as you can see, most of the stuff is getting aligned really good. Now, there are always issues like these where you have the cut seams showing off that, hey, this doesn't make sense. But once again, those are stuff that we're going to dive in later and learn how to cut our UV correctly. But for now, this is perfectly fine. Another issue that we have is this piece. While it looks good, it's actually horrible because this surface and this surface are n-gons. And an n-gon basically means that our surface or our polygon, the face, single face, has more than 4 vertices. In our case, if I'm correct, these were 10 each, so these are 40 vertices which are holding this UV or this face together. That's just a mess. And it's going to cause a lot of issues down the road. So I'm going to delete these by clicking delete on my keyboard and clicking on faces. Afterwards, I'm going to click on 2 on my keyboard to go into select mode. And then I'm going to hold Alt and click on the edge to select all the connecting edges, as you can see. And then I'm going to go to face and then grid fill. And now we have a face which exists only out of polygons, so 4 vertices, each of them. I'm going to do the same for the bottom part. And now that we have this, we can basically continue and add some correct UVs to this piece. So I'm going to go into U, select all of them, and we see that this is really wrong because it's still using the old data. And we're going to click on U, Smart UV Project, Unwrap. And now we have the correct UV mapping for this piece. And before you know it, our chair is starting to take shape. Let's quickly also do these two legs. So click on U. We can do both at the same time. UV Unwrap, Smart UV Project. Great. Also going to select all of these. Edit mode, A to select all of them, U to Smart UV Project. And this looks much, much better. And just like that, we have a textured chair which we have created. Now, there's a lot more left to do. For example, is the material behaving how we want it to behave? If I were to go into our shading view, rendered view basically, and add, let's say, a point light and move that up and just add more power to it, we could see if our material is behaving how we want it to. And so far, it looks good. Now, usually when we do these stuff, to make sure that we stay consistent, we have a test scene that we create. And we always take the final model with the texture and we put it in that scene to see if its materials are behaving correctly. So we test it in different scenes, so a night scene, a day scene, a scene where the weather maybe changes, or maybe an indoor scene. If everything looks good, then we push it to our production pipeline and we can use it in-game or inside of a render. But for now, we have added some textures to our chair and we are good to go. So try this for yourself and see if you can get the hang of the Smart UV Unwrap and figuring out how this works. Now, something that I haven't explained to you is under UV editing, is moving around. Make sure to save your project and afterwards try to move some UVs around and see what happens. Do not save it again, so you can always revert back to your original file. And whenever you're ready, let's head into the next video. See you there.